I've been asked several times, what's the best handgun? What's the best for me? What do I carry? What load choice? All of that. And this is a very personal thing. So I really can't tell everybody out and say, what should you carry? Because there are very effective cartridges out there and effective guns to carry. They're all different from one another depending on, who you are and what you do and all that. It's a very personal choice. But before I get into why I carry what I carry, I want to go through a little bit of information that I was reading. And this came from Guns and Ammo magazine. And it was written by Dave Spalding. And this is about a 10-year-old story, 9/24/2010. And this guy, he went and he interviewed over the course of 25 years as many people as he could find that were winners of gunfights. Cops, military, ordinary citizens. And that's the key. The ones that survived it, the ones that were the winners, not people who failed and were shot in some way or whatever and happened to live. So I'm going to go through a little bit of this story here. Now, I do train for instinctive shooting pretty much, where it's you pull up the gun and you try to place some shots without even really getting a front sight picture, where you just kind of use your muscle memory. And this is why I kind of do the same thing every time. I shoot semi-automatics and I shoot revolvers. And one thing I happen to do is I just do this type of wraparound grip on all my guns because it's the same every time. So that equates to muscle memory being the same every time, no matter what I pick up. And while that might not be perfect for winning semi-automatic championships, I guarantee that I probably shoot like any handgun, like a Derringer or something weird, better than most people because it's the same every time. You get the same pressed here. But one thing that's discussed is whether people use their sights or not in a defensive situation. And what's interesting about this is very interesting, and it has to do with the revolver. This guy interviewed people that used, shotguns, rifles, semi-automatic pistols, revolvers, all kinds of stuff. And the people that remember ever seeing their sights in the gunfight were two types of people. One, people that had rifles and used rifles because, it's a common thing that you train this way with it up to your cheek, obviously. But the only other people that ever remember saying they saw their sights in a defensive situation were people that shoot revolvers and carry revolvers. And it's because, most revolvers like the Smith & Wesson have just a basic red ramp. And you have blacked out sights for the most part in the back. And this guy, Dave Spalding, his idea is that a lot of these semi-automatic pistols, they have like 3 dots and night sights. That through his studies here of all these people, basically what he's seeing is that when you have sights like that, it's hard in a very quick defensive situation to know which one's which, more or less. But when you have just a black silhouette background back sight and you see that red ramp, obviously, even when I have my eyes kind of blurred real quick, you see that red ramp, and it's kind of interesting because you don't really see you see the rear ramp, the rear sights, but there's just something about it that's a natural feel of lining up that shot in a really quick situation. You have this barrel the way it is and that sight just on it points naturally. Now, this Dave Spalding guy, he also went through some other statistical data, and there was one that was by the Illinois State Police, and it was the Police Marksman Association, or the PMA, and they had a lot of trends that were different than the FBI's trends. The FBI's trends said, your average gunfight's at 10 feet, something like that, and your hit ratio is typically 18%, but what they saw was it's more like 20 feet. The typical shooting of winners, not losers, winners, was 20 feet. And oftentimes this FBI data that says it's 10 feet, they're saying this is officers that were shot. But the Illinois study, it's not officers that were shot, it's officers that survived, ordinary people that survived. And that's at 20 feet is their average. And their hit ratio is actually not 18%, but 62%. So one of the things that was trending in a lot of these different studies is that the person this guy interviewed, the people who said that they were the most calm, the most cool, the most collected, and the most prepared were the ones that fired from a little bit of a distance. So basically that's painting the picture that a person that is kind of prepared and they're thinking in their head what might go down. Let's say I'm standing here and I see a guy that's 20 feet away and I can tell, I just know that he is about to attack me. And I'm prepared in some way. I have my hand on my gun somehow. And when he starts the attack, I'm able to land the first shot at 20 feet And statistically, over the past century, it's always been known that the person that lands the first shot is typically the winner. So it's painting a picture that the person that's mentally prepared and they're at a distance of 20 feet and they're playing it out in their head, they're most likely to win that fight. Now, when it comes to ammunition, there's not really one or two or three whatever ammunitions that are better, or there's not really a trend of ammunition necessarily that's better. But in this guy's studies, he saw that ones that came back again and again and again and again as ones that were very effective was the 9mm plus P plus, the 45 ACP in any hollow point, and the 38 special plus P lead semi-wad cutter hollow point, the FBI load. Those were all known to be really effective rounds, and they were trending in the study he did where he talked to these 200 people as those were ones that did very, very well. So on to what I carry and why I carry it. Okay, I carry in a way that is first on comfort and repeatability, second on effectiveness. And a lot of people like to do it the other way around. They're going to pick what is most effective and find some way to carry that gun so that they have them on them. But what I like to do, I have some health issues, and this plays a part into it, is I like to carry the same way every time in a way that's repeatable, in a way that's comfortable, but within that parameter, carry what I think the best possible choice is. So what I carry is I carry in a pocket, and I carry in a pocket holster, and my best choice that I found through all the choices that I have is a snub-nose revolver chambered in 327 Federal Magnum, and I'll tell you why. All right, I kind of felt the need to cut into this video because one of the most important things I was trying to explain in this video of why I carry the 327 Federal Magnum. Basically, it's internal ballistics. It's got a lot to work with that isn't really thought of, but this will give you a little bit of an illustration of what I mean here. We have a 9mm, we have a 38 Special. These are both plus Ps actually. And then the 327 Federal Magnum. Now, what makes the 327 Federal Magnum really interesting here? First, I'm going to explain these two here. Typically, when we talk about a 9mm and a 38 plus P, not always, but a lot of times, companies will use the same powder and actually the same powder charge to create cartridges like that. And because the case capacity on a 9mm is so short, you have 35,000, or if it's a plus P, I think it's up to 38,500, I believe, pressure. But anywhere between 35,001 and 38,500 is your 9mm plus P pressure. And when we talk about 38 Special, your plus P, your maximum is 20,000 psi. Okay. Same powder charge, but because this is pushed out further and this is pushed deeper, we have a lot more energy typically with 9mm. And we have the same type of thing going on with 327 Federal Magnum. The 327 Federal Magnum oftentimes uses about the same powder charge as 9mm and 38 Special plus P. But because the case capacity is so incredibly tiny, let me kind of show here. You actually have 38 Special and a 327 brass here. Your brass is about the same overall length between 38 Special and 327. In fact, I think it's identical. But your internal capacity is significantly less. It's closer to a 9mm capacity, but stretched out longer. And then the brass is annealed in such a way that we can handle up to 45,000 psi, or it might be 45,000 cup, I'm not sure. But either way, a lot more pressure. What makes this extraordinarily important when we talk about terms of this is that the 327 Federal Magnum, let's pull this 38 out of the way. The 327 Federal Magnum, well, I can put this back up because this is relevant here. Because we're all working with about the same amount of powder charge, these all have relatively the same felt recoil in guns that weigh about the same, because that's where most of your felt recoil comes from. Like if we took a 357 Magnum, that's using significantly more gunpowder. And as everybody knows, between a 357 and a 9mm, you have significantly more felt recoil with the 357 Magnum, even though both are about 35,000 psi, and that's because the 357 has a lot more powder in that cartridge, and that's what's causing that extra recoil. And it also needs more barrel length to burn it up. So the higher pressure you go, the less barrel length you need to burn up the powder. But because this
case capacity is, you know, roughly what a 9mm is for the powder and the powder charge it holds. That means your felt recoil on 327 Federal Magnum is going to be about the same as 38 plus P or 9mm. And as we know, 38 and 9mm have a lot less felt recoil than 357 Magnum. So what we have here is the same felt recoil pretty much as 9mm and 38 plus P, but oftentimes we're twice as powerful as the 38 Special, and maybe I don't know the percentage, but more powerful than the 9mm. And I say that because when we're talking even a 4-inch barrel here, we have more power, especially the gold dot and this little revolver here with this barrel that's significantly shorter. We have more power in this than a full size or 4-inch barrel 9mm, and that's partly because of the pressure. We have about the same powder charge, so about the same felt recoil, but the pressure is higher. And just like how the 9mm has the same powder charge as 38 and the pressure is higher, it has more energy than 38. Same thing going on with 327 Federal over a 9mm. About the same powder charge, but because we're increasing our pressure up to 45,000, you have more power, but the same felt recoil. So you kind of get what I'm trying to say here. And the higher the pressure, the higher and the higher pressure you go, if you have a powder charge that's not particularly high, like we have less powder charge in 327 than 357, yet we have significantly higher pressure. What that means is in lesser barrel, it'll burn up more of that powder. So not only are you, you know, really efficient, but you're also more powerful than 9mm. Like if we put a 9mm in a gun like this, even a plus P, you know, in terms of foot pounds, we're probably going to be talking somewhere around like a gold dot plus P. Maybe if we're lucky, maybe 360, 370 foot pounds energy. Maybe I don't even think we'd get that, but maybe. As we're at this, we're at like 430 foot pounds with the gold dot with the 327. So I wanted to explain that in detail because it's really pretty much the most important part of why a 327 Federal Magnum, because 327 Federal Magnum was designed. It's the only cartridge that was designed from the ground up as a snub nose cartridge, unlike 357 or 38. So that's extraordinarily important in this whole argument because it was designed to have that kind of pressure. It's designed to have low recoil. It's designed to use a lower powder charge with that high pressure so we can have low recoil and very efficient in a short barrel. So I thought I would clear that up.
All right, so here's your typical handgun size, I should say, or type. Double stacked 4-inch barrel. This is a Security 9, Ruger Security 9, but it's basically the same size as a Glock 19. And the reason why I carry this little snubby here, it's a lot smaller. Okay, this has more power typically than a 9mm out of a 4-inch barrel, but we're talking a 1.875-inch barrel. The hottest ammunition I pretty much test through this is gold dot plus P, and we're hitting right around 390 to 400 to 410 foot-pounds energy, somewhere in that range. The gold dot 327 out of this little short barrel was 434 foot-pounds energy. I think it was 1398 feet per second and 434 foot-pounds. And why that matters is that it's doing it with a 100-grain bullet rather than a 124-grain bullet. So it's a smaller diameter, but you know, velocity is a really important part to bullet expansion. So when you have that much velocity on that little of a bullet, it's going to expand. And even if it weren't going to expand, if it were like a solid, it's going to mangle up more than slower rounds. So that's why I chose that caliber, and why the LCR, well, it holds 6 rounds, as where your typical J-frame holds 5, but also your typical semi-automatics in this size range are like 6.1 or 6+1 and 9mm or 380, and sometimes they're not very reliable. This is 6 shots and it's never failed me, never had a jam. So that's a really important thing, because typically your average shots fired are 1 to 5, averaging 3, and if within those small window of rounds that you need and you have a jam, typically shot 2 or 3 is when I get a jam on most semi-automatic pistols. 2 or 3, and this is going to put out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 100% reliably. That's a really important thing when we're talking about personal protection. And the way I train pretty much is not to get lasers, to get red dots, to get the best sights, night sights. What I like to do, like I explained at the beginning, was I like to grip every gun the same way, and this is going to, give me the same muscle memory every time. And that's the way I'm training. I'm training to shoot as if I didn't even have sights. So that's why I like to do the same thing every time, so that no matter what handgun I have, it's going to shoot the same for me every time. And being just a low profile sight, and we're not having a hammer spur on the back of this is going to draw from the pocket wonderfully. So to me, that makes a lot of sense, because you have that unassuming draw, and this goes along with being prepared at that 20 feet. It's a little bit harder to have that unassuming draw when you're going like this, and the person that is thinking of attacking you might accelerate their attack or be more aggressive. As where this, I got my hand, I'm wiggling my hand around to get a good fit. I'm taking my pointer finger and I'm kicking back that holster. So when I draw, it's that fast. And that's going to place my first shot a little bit further away on that attacker, and that gives you a lot more room. And you might not have that ability even in a pocket semi-automatic. They're not as ergonomic. They can kind of snag a little bit, but also it might not be reliable if you've missed that first shot or two, as where the Revolver pretty much will be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot from 20 feet and just see how I can do with some simulated drills. All right, I'm 20 feet from my silhouette target there, and what I have for ammo isn't the best ammo, but it's what I have. I reloaded a bunch of it, and it's a 95 grain lead wad cutter. We're doing about 1,050 feet per second. It's not extremely powerful or anything like that, but what I've noticed is full power ammo doesn't necessarily have more recoil necessarily. Gold dots a little bit, but so here I am. I'm just going to pull out and just kind of see where these rounds shoot for me first. Just kind of a little bit of a slow fire here, just to kind of get an idea. All right, so as you can see there, it's got a pretty good accuracy, but that's using the sights. But that's what we hope to be able to do, is be able to use the sights like that. But as you saw, it's pretty easy to control those shots. But if I had this in my pocket and I had to kick it out and try to fire a shot, it might be a little harder. Not the best holster, not the best pants, as you saw there, but that's part of my training, is if that happens, to pull that right up off there. And it's not always like that on these pants, but if I can kick that holster off, I can put down the threat pretty easily. Looks like I have 3 rounds left. And what's hardest to do is to not get any sight picture, but to rely on your muscle memory. So I'm going to try to do my muscle memory. See what happens. It won't be as tight, but this is what we'll see. But that's how I train to get my muscle memory kind of, where I want it to be with all firearms, so that I can be a little more effective in a situation where I don't have time to be, tactical. And I have tons of improvements that I definitely need to make, because I don't have very good muscle memory with one-handed, and I don't shoot left-handed very often. So I'm going to pull this up just for a little bit of safety. Right now, I'm not going to pull it directly out of my pocket. I'm just going to keep it at my side here, but I'm going to see what kind of muscle memory I got with one-handed shooting. I'm going to aim, or at least try to aim at the bottom of the target so I can see those hits a little bit better, just to kind of see what I'm working with here. I can't hold it quite as tight to the center as what I could do otherwise. So Left-handed, I'll probably miss the target completely. My whole goal is to be able to have two hands on this gun, so. I don't even know if I'm hitting that target at all. Definitely a lot of work I need to do on that. But I'll go back to my preferred method of shooting, two-handed, and do a draw and then do a reload and just see how that looks. What I find interesting is I did take a concealed carry class a lot of years ago, and I always telling you, make sure that you yell that you have a permit to carry. And I have a permit to carry, stop. I have a permit. And I think, well, that's kind of not practical. But let's just say I had the worst case scenario and I got to put a lot of rounds downrange, 20 feet here. And I guess I'm going to move up about half the distance for my reload just to kind of simulate that target coming back at me. Or coming at me. So let's see what I can do. And it's not easy to get this reload. And it's peppered a little bit, so that's how I shoot this. Now I'm going to do a wood penetration test just to kind of illustrate the caliber and my choice of caliber. Like I said, you know, the power is pretty good, but what I often see is ammunition typically out of this gun is right in there around 350 foot-pounds, and you know, you get a lot better case extraction at that energy. But what I want to do is kind of a scientific test here, a wood penetration test to kind of see the difference between some other calibers and this. All right, what's really interesting about this ammunition is it's all XTB bullets, and this is a 124 grain plus P9 millimeter. 125 grain 357, a 100 grain 327. What's interesting, it's very, very interesting here, is in the past, and this particular pistol here, the Security 9, with this 124 grain bullet, I was averaging 1152 feet per second, or 365 foot-pounds energy. With this 327, I was averaging 1282 feet per second, or 365 foot-pounds energy. And this 327, 1149 feet per second, 366 foot-pounds energy. So 365, 366, 365 foot-pounds energy. I think we can live with that for a fair amount of energy on different shaped and different weight bullets. So let's do this test and see how these compare. All right, so I have 5 2x4s, and I'm just gonna set this up. And I'll put some water behind it so it doesn't you know, slide back immediately. All right, 9mm. Let's hit this wood. All right. Now we have the 357 Magnum. Gotta hit this kind of centered here. Right where I wanted it. And then we're gonna hit it with the 327 Federal Magnum. And we'll see if there's a difference in wood penetration with the same power, but different bullet shapes and weights. All right, let's take this apart and take a look at it. All right, let's open this thing up and see if there's a difference here. By the way, that is my carry round for the 327. That's exactly what I carry in it every day because I feel like it gives the best balance of power and shootability. And that 357 is actually what I would carry also. I don't carry that 357 much, but that's what I would carry in it because we're looking for a lower powered 357 to kind of tame that recoil for the most part. So let's look at our first board here. There's our 9mm, our 357, and our 327. And of course, they're all going to go through our first board like most do. Here's our 9mm, our 357, our 327. They all went through our second board. Here is our third board. 9mm, 357, 327. I can actually see the 327 right here. And the 357 is right there. So our 327 and our 357 is about the same penetration depth. Our 9mm, it kept going. And it impacted our fourth board and is in our fourth board. And you know, that's kind of predictable. 9mm has a little bit pointier nose, and that always seems to penetrate through stuff a little bit easier. But when we look at our 327 and our 357, we're talking roughly the same thing. It looks like the 357 is a little bit deeper than the 327, but you know, when we look at this low end 327, you know, this is what I would carry, and this is also a low end. So, you know, 366 foot-pounds, 365, 365. You know, there's a difference. You would think that this would go deeper with having the same energy roughly, but it did not. But you know, there's also momentum at play. You know, when you go heavier, you have more momentum, so that's why the 357 probably went deeper than this, and the 9mm because the bullet nose. So that's what you get today. Very interesting stuff. Just wanted to show what I carry, why I carry, and all of that, and that's why. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.